Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are looking for jobs, how to build a resume, or how to have a good strategy, or even if you are an HR enthusiast, then this video is for you. In today's video, our speaker is a podcaster, professor at TRU, and above all that, she is an HR expert with over 20 years of experience. She is my first female speaker onto my channel, and I'm very excited about it. If you are here to know and learn about jobs, resumes, and LinkedIn profiles, then you will hear it all straight from the expert. So without any delay, let's get into it and welcome Melanie Reed. Hello, Melanie. A very warm welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited to have you here on my channel today. You are my first female speaker on my channel, and I'm double excited about it. So, how are you feeling today?
I'm great, Bella. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. And before getting started, can you please tell a little bit about yourself, like where you're from and how
Sure.
you found your passion towards HR field and stuff like that?
For sure, yes. As you know, I am a TRU grad as well, and I grew up in a small town just a few hours north of Kamloops, and did my undergrad at TRU many moons ago. I won't say when because it'll reveal how old I am. But it was through my university time that I discovered HR. I didn't know what HR was when I was in high school, as many people don't, but I had this passion for business. So my dad owned a small business, and I had opportunities to work with him in the summers a little bit, and that exposed me to some different aspects of business. I also had opportunities to work in hotels. And when I first went to university, I thought, maybe I'll just take hotel management. I thought that that was interesting. Hospitality was interesting. And then I started taking business courses and discovered HR and thought, wow, this is really a good fit for me because I liked working with people. And it felt like I would be able to mix my interest of business with my passion for working with people. And yeah, so that's really what got me interested in it. I also had a really cool HR prof when I went to TRU. She was a sessional instructor. She was from the UK, and she had all these really great stories and experiences, and she really inspired me. And I know I've tried to adopt some of her methods of teaching as a professor, because I just found that her stories were so compelling to me, and it kind of brought something into reality that I couldn't imagine because I'd never worked in a business, and as I said, I didn't really know what HR was. So those kind of things combined sort of fueled my interest into HR.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And also, you are now going ahead inspiring more students, and that's amazing. So, now can you tell a little bit about your HR Mentor podcast?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So, this is, one of the ways that I felt like I could give back. So, before I became an HR professor, I spent 20 years working in corporate HR roles. So, I worked in for-profit organizations, university, municipalities. And so I had this kind of range of experience before I came to teaching. But this very start of my career, before I ever got my first HR job, was as an employment counselor. And so I've always sort of had this underlying interest in the job market, in helping people find employment. And really, that was how I started my career. Um, and so when I started teaching, I would talk to students about HR career paths. It was just sort of a natural thing for me to talk about. I also had a background in recruitment, spent a lot of time in recruitment, so sort of knew the processes quite well. And what I started to find was students were coming to me asking for advice about finding their first HR role. And So I would have student after student come into my office, can you look at my resume? Can you give me some advice? I'm not having any success. And I realized I have to find a way to scale this because I can't meet with everybody one on one.
Right.
And I also recognized that there was a need for something more specific to HR students, right? We have amazing career resources at TRU, and I'm sure other universities do to help students if they take advantage of it. But I knew my own experience in HR was a little bit different than other people looking for jobs at a university. So I thought, how can I scale this? And that's when the idea for a podcast came up. And like many creative people, I talked myself out of it for a couple of years because I was too scared to hit record, to post something. And then, the pause of the pandemic gave me an opportunity to say, I think the time is right. And I had some space and I was at home all the time. And so I decided to launch it in February 2020. So, or
That's
February
perfect.
2020 or 2021. Can't even remember. I'm on season 5 now, but
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
I think
it's been great.
pandemic has opened a lot of gates towards something that really interests people as well. So I think that
Absolutely.
is a great place you started. So I know you're into labor relations and unions and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So talking about unions, do you
Okay.
think it's better for employees to join in some union, or do you think it's going to create a culture separate from the organizational members?
That's a tricky question. I think, I'll start with the classic HR answer, which is it depends, as you know, as an HR student.
Right.
It really does depend on the job, the organization, and the union. I had this conversation with a couple of people the other day, and the person I was talking to said, "Well, I don't like unions. I don't agree with unions. That sort of thing." And they're an HR person. I know I certainly had a bit of that perspective when I started in my HR career, but I find that unions play a really good regulating role in many organizations. Are they necessary in every organization? No. But we also, that assumes that employers have the same perspective on how to treat employees,
Right.
right? So I think unions can hold management to account. There is research that shows that unions have a positive effect on management practices in many workplaces because management knows that they're being held account by this third party and that there are legal frameworks to support that, right? So I wouldn't say that it's always a good idea to join a union or start a union. I think it's very situational. It depends on the organization. I've worked in some really dynamic private organizations that were not unionized and incredible caring practices towards employees, incredibly engaged employees, opportunities for employees to participate, good career opportunities. But that's not always the case for every organization, right? And I'll add one more thing. I also think having worked in unionized workplaces as an HR professional, the union can be a really powerful ally.
Mhm.
um, their members might not want to see them in that way, but if you have an important initiative you want to move forward that's going to benefit workers and the organization, the union can be a really good advocate to help get employees on board. So when it comes to change management, they're an incredibly important stakeholder, and depending on the union and the culture of that particular local, they can be really beneficial in terms of helping management implement new programs and practices. And I've seen that work very effectively. So, yeah, so not always a bad thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about some few misunderstandings or few myths people have while applying for jobs.
Okay.
So let's explore different questions,
Yeah, for
scenarios
sure.
on that. So let's say if a newly graduate person is looking for a job
Mhm.
and sees that in this job description they need 3 to 5 years of
Mm.
experience,
Yeah.
and he knows that he can do most of the tasks. So in such a scenario, what would be the best strategy for him or
Mm.
her to apply?
Yeah, it's a really important question because I think a lot of us will count ourselves out of a posting before we even apply.
Right.
And I think that's a huge mistake. So, one of the things I always tell students is that you're going to see HR jobs, and you'll see these in other professions, not just HR. And there'll be entry level jobs, or kind of sort of maybe entry or even mid career jobs, and the employer will ask for all kinds of experience. But I know from my own experience, it's not always required. Lots of times employers will put things in as requirements because they're nice to haves, not need to haves. And so what will happen is people will say, well, I don't have 5 years experience. They won't even apply, not knowing that the employer just put that in there as maybe a way to weed people out, or maybe as it'd be great if we got somebody with 5 years experience, um, where they could have had a really good opportunity to get that job. So what I recommend people do is they look at the job function and duties. They do a little bit of research on the organization and find out, maybe where this role is situated in the organization. And if they feel that on balance, they could do most of the duties now and have evidence that supports that they could do most of those duties. So you could describe it in an interview, you could put some things on your resume or cover letter that show you can do most of it, apply, right? But focus more on the function of the role, the duties of the role, and sometimes take experience as a grain of salt. Now, if it's an HR manager role, or a, marketing manager role, or anything like that, and you're a new grad and you don't have experience in that field, and they're asking for 5 to 7 years experience, that's not something I would encourage you to apply for, right? So look at where you're at, look at your past experience, really explore the job. And this is a great place for informational interviews,
Mhm.
right? Because if you're not sure about a job, but you think, I could probably do that and do it well, and I have some evidence that shows I could do that, but all the requirements don't match for me, try and set up an informational interview with someone in the organization and ask them some questions about that.
Okay.
Because when I've done that as an outsider, looking at job postings on behalf of students, and I call and ask, do you really need this? Sometimes I hear, oh, no, we just put that in there. They should definitely apply. But if people aren't doing that and making the connection and following up, they're not going to know. Right.
Right.
So does that make sense? Like,
Yes,
yeah,
totally,
yeah,
totally. I think that's the best way to approach. Many people, like initially, just while looking at the job description, they'll assume that this is not for me and they'll move forward.
yeah.
But I think that's just a strategy of the employer to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't even, it's not even a strategy. They just use the last posting they had and it didn't get updated, and they're just
Right.
like, they're busy and they suddenly have a vacancy and they're like, yeah, that looks pretty good. We'll throw it up and see what we get. And
Mhm.
they're not even thinking about a recruitment strategy. They
Oh,
just have a gap to fill and they're in a hurry to do that, right? So if
right.
you can make it easy for them to see how you fit,
Yep.
you're going to rise to the top of the pile, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. So now, talking about resumes,
Yeah.
do you recommend people to put their part-time experience while they're looking for a full-time job?
Absolutely. 100%. And how I would approach it is to try and highlight transferable skills that you think might be relevant to the job you're applying for. So, the mistake a lot of people make is they put whatever in their work experience and they just put the job description,
Descriptions.
right? So here are all the duties of things I did. But again, if you put yourself in the seat of the hiring manager, think, what would I want to know about this, right? So let's say, for example, that you're working at a coffee shop and you're a student, but you were a key holder. You had to open and close the store. You did cash outs. You directed the work or gave feedback to other workers. But your job posting just says that you made coffee, you helped customers, you collected cash, right? Because really, those are the duties of your job. But there were all these other things you did, right? Your ability to handle stress and work under pressure, right? So
Right.
you could give some sense of the volume
Mm.
that the coffee shop is handling during a shift. So, if you're working at one of the popular coffee shops here on campus during the middle of the semester, I'm guessing at 10 o'clock in the morning, it's probably pretty stressful, maybe even more so at 8:30 in the morning, whatever, right? That's very different than a small coffee shop and your shift is always on Sunday afternoon sort of thing, right?
Right.
So you could give some context
Mm-hmm.
for the work environment that shows that you can handle pressure or work in a stressful environment, that sort of stuff. The other thing I would also highlight is any accomplishments.
Right.
So if you received some kind of promotion while you were working there, if you received some recognition, so maybe you were the employee of the month, if that is still a thing these days, or you were given the opportunity at a staff meeting to make a presentation, or you did at the beginning of the shift, if there were health and safety talks and your manager asked you to deliver those on a weekly basis or something. Those are all things that make you stand out.
Right.
So I like to see a little section at the bottom of any job that
Mm-hmm.
says accomplishments and just bullet pointing one or two things that you feel like were really standout things that happened there for you.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
That's perfect. So talking about LinkedIn profiles,
Hmm.
do employers really check LinkedIn profiles of the candidates?
I believe they do.
They do.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I think, especially if you're applying for jobs in HR or any of the business fields, right?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, they're going to want to know that you even have a LinkedIn profile these days, right? Because I think that is a bare minimum for people in business for networking is to have LinkedIn.
True.
Even 5 years ago, that might not have been true, but I think now,
No,
I
it's
think it's an
really on top.
expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, thinking about hiring manager, short on time. I've got this resume in front of me. How can I quickly validate this? Go to LinkedIn. If
Oh,
LinkedIn looks vastly different than the resume, that might be a red flag.
right.
It might just be a question in an interview, but it might make you not go to the top of the pile if there's some kind of discrepancy.
Right.
So for example, your resume says you're pursuing a career in HR. They go to your LinkedIn and it says something vastly different, that you have a passion for, programming and supply chain or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it doesn't match.
True.
So that disconnect, if there's a pile of applicants, they're going to go with someone who's been consistent, who consistently aligns with what they're looking for.
True.
So I do think they look at it. Yes.
Talking about jobs, what
Hmm.
platform do you think is the best to apply for jobs and to actually get one?
Oh, none of them. Because I honestly believe the best way to get a great job is through connections and networking, right?
Mm,
I think it's something that a lot of new grads and even professionals fear doing,
right.
but it is still one of the best ways to get a great job. It gives you insights into what employers are looking for. So, some of these things we've talked about already. By making that connection before you apply and having an understanding of what they're really looking for allows you to tailor your application to what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they've already talked to you.
Right.
You've made it easy for them, right? So, employers want to make hiring decisions that are the lowest possible risk. And so, the more information they have about you, the lower the risk in making that decision, right?
Right.
So, by you reaching out to them, in a sense, you're helping them because they can ask you questions. They can get to know you better, and they will get a sense of whether or not they think you would be, a good fit for a role or for an organization, right? But if you're just a piece of paper or an online application, you are just like everybody else that has similar background and education, right?
Right.
So, um, I don't recommend any platform. I think there's lots of great platforms and that they've come such a long way over the, last 10 years. They have built-in assessments, they have video interviews, they have all these things. But if you focus your job search on the platform and how you apply to make yourself stand out, you're missing a huge opportunity, because
Right.
the opportunity is in connecting with people and
Awesome.
potentially getting referrals. And yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So now let's talk about CPHR.
Okay, great.
For all of our HR students,
Yes.
can you please tell how being a CPHR member
Hmm.
helped you in your career?
Yeah, well, you know what's funny? I realized a couple of days ago that I have been a CPHR member since I was a student in my undergrad at TRU. That
Wow,
long.
that's a
Yes.
lot.
It is a long
That's a
time.
long time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the 90s.
Wow.
And I was the student rep for
Mhm.
TRU for CPHR.
Okay.
I believe I won the scholarship, maybe. They even had those scholarships back then. I was on the
Okay.
advisory committee and I never left. I've stayed with CPHR my whole career. And
Awesome.
it has been incredibly valuable to me as a professional. So there's a few things I would say. The learning opportunities are huge, right? Because number one, being a CPHR and getting your designation, to get your designation, you have to have a certain level of education and experience. And once you get it, you have to maintain that through professional development. So,
Right.
in a sense, it forces you to stay current. But also, they provide so many great learning experiences, both from professionals, companies that sell education, but also from other members,
Right.
right? So you have the opportunity to network and connect with other members who can teach you things. I've always been somebody who likes collaboration, who likes connecting with people, and so learning from other HR professionals and what they're doing in their organizations is an incredible benefit to you as a professional. The designation gives you credibility, right? um and the path to getting there has changed many times since I started in HR, but I think that having a designation gives you professional credibility,
Okay.
and so I think that that is valuable to work towards however you do that.
Right.
um and I think, again, the opportunities to network with people through CPHR are vast, right? And now with technology the way it is, you don't have to just network with people in your local area, which is how it was when I started, right? So I only really knew people in the Kamloops area. Then when I moved to Prince George, I got to know a few people there. When I moved to the Lower Mainland, I got to know people there. CPHR has also helped me with my job search.
Awesome.
So when I moved to the Lower Mainland and I was looking for an HR job, I went to a recruitment roundtable once a week and I got leads from other people and we supported each other through our job search. And that was a time when, you know, there wasn't a lot of use of the internet for job seeking and certainly for applying for jobs. Um, there were some places where you would email things. There were job boards online, but it was very limited.
Right.
So you had to connect with people
Okay.
to get advice and to get guidance. So
Very.
I think it's incredibly valuable. Yeah, there's a cost to it, right? But I think there's incredible value in holding it, and
Definitely.
I can see myself continuing to do that until I retire. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. That's
yeah,
perfect. Opportunity to all the HR students
yes,
about this entire CPHR thing and the
yeah.
events, and they're really beneficial to connect with employers or anybody like generally in HR background. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great platform. Yeah.
And one other thing I will say about that I'd be remiss not to talk about is just the mentoring program as well, right? So, even as students, you can apply to be part of the CPHR mentoring program. You can get paired with an experienced HR professional who will mentor you. And then as you advance in your career, you can pay it back and you can mentor others. So, I was a protege, and because of the relationship I had with my mentor, was the reason why I was able to get the job at TRU, allowed me to
Wow.
move back to Kamloops when I wanted to move back here, or my family, we wanted to move back here. But because she referred me to the director, I did an informational interview. A little bit of time went past. They posted a job. I called him and said, hey, my family would be ready to move back to Kamloops. You have this job posting. He said, you should apply. I went through the process. It wasn't like you get to skip the process or whatever, but he already knew me because we'd had this conversation, and I was offered the job.
That's nice.
So it does work,
Right.
right?
Totally.
And the mentoring program can be an incredible way to make more connections and to also learn, right? Yeah.
Perfect. Totally. So finally, one message you would like to give to all the students who are
Mm.
about to graduate soon.
Oh, one message. Wow, I have so many things. A couple of things that come up for me related to the job search. Number one is, don't be afraid to have preferences and to focus on those preferences. I think there's this fear of being too preferential in your job search or too specific that you're going to miss out on opportunities. Uh, but I think if you've done some work on understanding yourself, what you're interested in, where you feel you would be the best fit, and you sort of double down on that, you're going to have a better opportunity of getting noticed. And the reason why is because when you talk about where you want to go, when you talk about, a job opportunity that you think is perfect for you, your passion and excitement and interest is going to come through to that employer, and they're going to be excited about that, right? But if you go in and you've applied for so many jobs and you finally get an interview and you're like not even really sure what the job is because you didn't really tailor anything to it, you're not really that excited about maybe the company or the actual opportunity, but it's a job, that's also going to come across, right?
Right.
So don't be afraid to have preferences, and to focus on them, but also don't expect miracles by just the spray and pray approach to job hunting, by just spending so much time on your resume
Right.
and just sending it out to anything that has HR in the title. Didn't work for me, 25 years ago, and it doesn't work today either. And it just, what it does is it causes people to feel frustrated and demotivated because they think, I'm doing all this stuff. I've applied for 100 jobs. Um, that's great, but
It's good for the count, but not quality
sure,
wise, maybe.
exactly, right? How much quality and intention went behind those applications. And then when you don't get a call back on the 100 that you just, sprayed out there, you're going to feel demotivated, and you
True.
might give up and think you can't have a career in HR. And that's not true. That's just not true, right?
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So now I have some fun round for you.
Okay.
So I have got these few apps,
Okay.
and you can rate them on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst.
Okay.
You can, like,
Hopefully I've heard of them.
yeah. Okay,
Okay.
let's go ahead with the most common
Okay.
and popular, LinkedIn.
Well, I would say it's a 9 or a 10 because it's really useful, right? Yeah.
Glassdoor.
So I would say it's useful. I would say it's probably like a 6 or a 7 because I think sometimes people write things on there out of emotion and not really logic. So I think sometimes it can be skewed. Yeah.
Monster.
don't even know if people use it anymore. Do people still use Monster?
At different regions, I guess.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Oh, gosh, I couldn't even comment on that. So I would say probably a 3. 'Cause,
Not here, maybe.
yeah.
Okay, Canada jobs.
Canada jobs. Don't really use it, but I would say it's probably pretty useful. So I would say like a 6.
6.
Yeah.
Sure. Job bank.
Depends what you're looking for. So, if you're looking for a summer job and you're still in university, yeah, lots of great jobs, especially, employers that are using the summer works funding to create jobs that they wouldn't otherwise have. There's some great opportunities on there for university students. So depending on your, like, where you're at, I would say it could be an 8 or a 9. But if you're looking for a professional job after university, it's probably more like a 3 or a 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the most popular, Indeed.
Indeed, yes. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it is pretty useful in terms of seeing what's out there. I don't know in terms of professional jobs how many get posted through Indeed. I think it's probably the case that they would end up there, but those jobs are also going to be on LinkedIn, or if you're a CPHR member, they're going to come through the CPHR job postings, right? Which I think is a very valuable source for HR jobs. So I would say Indeed is probably like a 7 or 8, just because everything sort of ends up there.
Okay.
But I would prioritize LinkedIn probably.
LinkedIn, for sure.
Yeah.
So for the final round, I have this rapid fire round.
Okay.
And yeah, are you excited?
I won't overthink things, as I tend to do.
For sure. Let's
Okay.
not overthink and just go with flow.
Okay.
What is the first thing that comes into your mind when I say human resource?
People.
What's the weirdest thing that you have seen on a resume?
Oh, well, it wasn't really with a resume, but it accompanied a resume, and it was a PowerPoint presentation of someone's family vacation.
That's weird. Why would they post that?
I don't know. I think they were trying to show us that they had a life outside of work and had work-life balance. It was this lovely photo album of this family vacation they took, and it was quite, fairly exotic, but it was really the strangest thing I'd ever seen. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. AI in HR would be a friend or a foe?
I think it's a friend on balance. I think you have to be careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing about HR you wish people would stop believing?
That anyone can do it. Hear it all the time. It's not that hard. It's common sense. Anyone can do it. Not true.
Not true at all.
Yeah.
If not HR, what career would you choose?
Teaching is what I would have said, which is where I ended up, right? Yeah, probably
Teaching.
Probably where I am.
Yeah.
Or, I even though it makes me nervous, I enjoy public speaking and creating content.
You're great at it.
Well, thank you. It's not easy for me. Like I do, I have a lot of self-doubt around some of that, but I enjoy it. It's fun for me. So, yeah.
Perfect. So, are you a tea person or coffee person?
I'm a coffee person. Yeah.
Morning person or night owl?
Morning person, 100%. Yeah.
And that is a wrap. How do you feel about it?
Oh, I think it was fun. It was good. I feel like I should have asked you more questions, or asked you some questions about what you think of some of these things, because
I think you answered it pretty amazing, and I'm pretty sure people will get good insight about jobs and resumes and how they can figure out stuff after graduation.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming to the
Thank you
podcast.
for
It was
inviting
lovely
me.
having you.
It was great to be here. Thank you so much.